So I was bored and had this random idea. What if I made a full Blender scene/world out of like random prompts or whatever? Those could have been from like comments or just like a random generator, but that feels like it could be fun. So today I'm going to start using a random scene generator with the prompt pumpkin patch to start this out. So getting started here, we're going to add a cube as our base plane here. Gonna scale it up a little bit to try and add as much, get the size right that I want. Add a bevel and add a color. I feel like that's a good start. Now we're going to use the knife tool to add a nice little path into here to add a little bit of separation between the two sides and add a little bit of depth to the scene by extruding it into the ground. Next, we're going to model the pumpkin because the pumpkin is very important because this is a pumpkin patch after all. Gonna subdivide that with the subdivision surface modifier and go into the sculpting menu. And I messed up, so we're gonna go back and apply that modifier and come back and begin to add a little bit of detail to the pumpkin. It's pretty simple and not necessarily the most realistic pumpkin, but using the snake tool to add the little stem at the top, I feel like works pretty good. Next, we're gonna add the colors just to begin, just so that I have a little bit of a reference for what goes where. Now I'm going to actually add the detail of the textures. Using the wave texture for the pumpkin is a great way to start, in my opinion. Now I'm going to fidget with the colors a little. I like that. Now we can use displacement to add a little bit more detail and depth to the pumpkin. Putting it on a really low number just adds a nice little detail to the pumpkin that I think looks pretty good. Now if we go into render view and crank up the light, we can darken the pumpkin a little bit. And I feel like if we darken the stem now, yes, that looks good. Now we're going to use displacement so that when we add a bunch of different pumpkins through duplication, it doesn't look terrible because they're all exactly the same pumpkin. There's just going to be a little bit of difference in these pumpkins. Now we're going to duplicate them a lot, rotate them, scale them up, and place them in many different places. I like that. Next, I feel like we're going to add a little bit of more detail around the pumpkins because they're just sitting on a flat, grassy surface right now. It's not even like grass. It's like green brick. So we're gonna add a cylinder to be a little bit of a dirt mound. I get what I want it to look like. I don't know if that comes across though. So if there's like farm soil, however, add it onto this to hopefully like improve the whole mood of this as in total. Gonna add some hay using curves in one of my favorite geometry node tricks that just makes everything so much easier. Add a little bit of color to this with object info and random. Link the materials so that they're all a different color, which looks fantastic. Next, we're going to add a cube to be our geometry node holder in this situation. Under the geometry node settings, append the nodes from a previous file that I like. And we're going to make a collection and get this all set up. Subdividing in weight paint and move back on to adding the UV map, save the file, head back over to the geometry node setting. It is a process to get this to work. Crank the number. Those are very big. We're going to shrink them down a little. It's kind of looking funny because of the cube subdivisions. I might need to fix that somehow. Probably by cutting open the edges of the cube. I'm going to try and fidget with it first to see if I can make it work. I don't think this is working. Let's just cut the edges off. Here on the side view, this might take me a second. Cut it there, perfect, that looks so much better. It looks a little too flat though and squarish, so maybe I'm gonna add a little bit of changes. That doesn't look terrible though, I feel like the lighting fits that pretty well actually. Yep, I might add a little bit of a displace effect to see if I can get something a little more interesting, but neither of these have looked particularly great, to be honest. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a difference to the dirt path. I'm going to take a dirt picture from the internet, add some UV unwrapping and some colors, and sort of fill it into the scene a little bit with displacement as well. That's looking okay. I'm going to try and unwrap this a little bit to make it fit a little better. There we go. I like that. That actually fits pretty well. Now I'm going to move those pumpkins over like I just did, save the file, move those out of the way. Try and mess with the background, see what looks good. I feel like a hay bale or something could look good, but I'm actually going to go with a scarecrow right now because I feel like that would be easier. Cut off the top. I feel like I can't get this to work, so I'm just going to maybe remesh this in a second because yeah, that's not working. Remesh it. There we go. That's basically a pumpkin. Throw that on the top of that, our little scarecrow staff. Make a little hat now. This is probably the worst way to make a little goofy hat ever, but that's kind of funny. I like that hat. Looks more like a safari hat than a scarecrow hat, but that's a-okay. I like that. Let's leave it shaded flat. Let's subdivide this. Make a little body here with some subdividing. I feel like that looks pretty good. It's like a low-res model for a scarecrow. I think it's fine. We're gonna use one of my favorite things of sculpt painting to add a little bit of just paint to our model. This is not working though, because it is not subdivided, and I just accidentally deleted it all. That's unfortunate. However, we're gonna fix that by subdividing it actually this time. That looks pretty good. There we go. We can add much better overalls now to the front. I like that. Add some buttons. Those don't look great. That looks a little better, I guess. Now we're going to use color attribute to add that in. That looks good. I'm not actually a big fan of that, so maybe if we throw a color ramp on that, okay, that looks ideal. We can definitely mess with the colors a little here to make them a little better looking, and I think that looks pretty good. Now for arms, I'm going to use my favorite tool, that is drawing curves into existence. Just realign them there. Realign the other side. That looks okay. Now if we bevel them up, that's like exactly what I want them to be. That's good. That the scarecrow does its job. I'm going to parent everything to the body and rotate it a little just to make sure everything not so straight. I like that. That is good. Now maybe the hay bale that I was talking about, but maybe not. Never mind. Now we're going to add an HDR to the background. That's not good. That one definitely feels like nice farm lighting. I feel like I don't want that background to be actually in the scene, but I don't really have a good way of not having it be there, so we're just going to use a plane to block it off. I feel like that's okay. And this is the final rendering for day 1.